Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Masterclass. My name is Will Winter. Today, we're talking about crafting culture. This is why you're here. How can we create environments, workplaces, team, encouraging vibes? We want a place where people can thrive, but also we want to get stuff done too. Where's the overlap? I want to get a few questions rolling as we wait for a few extra people to join the call today. I'd love to hear down below, what is your biz? What's your thing? Some of you are also in nonprofit sectors, so I'd love for us to just get a sense who's on the call today. Type that in the chat below. Throughout our time, lots of questions and comments. You guys can interact down below, and I'll do my best to pay attention. I've got 3 screens that I'm paying attention to here, so forgive me if I'm a little slow. Jim and Don, missionaries in Spain. I love that. I'm going to share a little bit of my story today too, and there's going to be some overlap. What's your business or thing? And is there something in your team environment that you're aware of? Something that is maybe an area of improvement, like engagement. Why aren't people buying into the initiatives? Maybe it's teamwork. You want to elevate teamwork. What's an area that you want to develop? Joel's working with an estate planning law firm. All right, one more thing as we get started here. Thank you guys. People are still joining in the room. Let's switch over here. One of the things I want to make sure that we have the best experience possible, and for some of you, that means just setting aside some of the work distractions that can take place. We got some people here, software founder, nonprofit, Hope Mission, lots of different people, but the overlap is that we lead teams. We want to influence them more effectively. Here's one more thing to do just to set up your experience today if you're joining live. There are some different ways you can configure Zoom, so you can see the little boop, boop, boop buttons here. If you change it to speaker view, that's going to make sure that I'm always front and center. And then if you put it full screen, that's also going to help to make sure that you guys are able to engage effectively. All right, let's go back here. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go through Culture 101. This is an introduction session. I'm going to leave you with a ton of meat, some actionable steps, but we do need to cover some essentials. What are the problems that we're actually trying to solve? For some people, culture is just this vibey, wokey, kind of feely thing, but it's so much more powerful than that. So we're going to talk about what problems we're practically addressing. I am going to share a little bit about me so that you know who's talking to you today and why does this matter so much. We're going to get a shared definition of what does culture actually mean so we can dive into those tools together. There's 7 core tools or levers, if you will, that leaders can use to dial in their team environments. I am going to end as well with an invitation. As I mentioned, this is an introduction, and so there is an additional opportunity to go even deeper. We got some comments here, some challenges. Trying to help one of my clients create a collaborative culture, collaborative or teamwork. Sometimes we try to avoid our team because we get more enjoyment working. We're a doer. We like to be in the front lines or in the weeds rather than leading people. I'm going to leave a link here in the chat. Now, this is for later. Some of you, if you have to hop off early, I don't want you to miss this. If you'd like to have a follow-up conversation with me, let's put that into the link as well. Maybe if you just click on that link, open it. That's my personal calendar. You can ignore it till later. If this is a replay, that will be somewhere below as well. I want to make sure that anyone who wants to continue this conversation has access to me personally. I can see a few of you, you're commenting the same things. Yeah, leading, that's a different ballpark than doing. Well, let's also leave one last note here, some encouragement as we get started. One takeaway. There could be many, but find one. If you're taking notes, you got a piece of paper, you got a pen, maybe you're on another screen typing. What is one takeaway that's going to make the biggest difference in your business in the next week or two? A single idea, we know the power of this, and some of us, it's either the cost of a bad idea, potentially tens of thousands of dollars gone down the drain from a bad idea, or tens of thousands of dollars from a single good idea. So there's going to be one takeaway that I want you to circle, highlight on your notes. And I'd love to hear that at the end of this call. We'll take time to dump those insights into the chat. All right, here's the thought to frame our conversation as we get started. Most leaders, when they're stuck, they think they have a strategy problem. Maybe it's a people problem or a motivation problem, but often it's tied back. They have a culture problem, The impact, this is the pain points, which some of you are already commenting in the chat. One of them is bottlenecks. Everything still depends on you. And as you grow, you were the only one at some point, and then you grew a team, but now they can't operate at the same level as you. They can't keep up. They can't make as good decisions, or excellence is not quite there until you step in. Another challenge, some of you have seen this, inconsistent standards. The definition of good changes from one person to the next. And you might identify this if you've heard the statement floating around, why can't they be more like? Insert the name of your favorite employee here, or maybe it's yourself. Why can't they be more like me? We need to make sure we're elevating the standards and getting a definition. That's one of the challenges we need to face with a culture deep dive. Attraction and retention, this is another one, is people who are amazing, these A players, these elusive A players, rock stars in their lane. They want to be in a strong environment. And maybe you have a challenge attracting these types of people, or if these type of people are on your team, but you find your best and brightest are leaving too early, that's another challenge. They want to be in an amazing environment. We know we've done this well when people say to us, Will, I was offered more money elsewhere, but I wanted to stay here because of the environment. That's the kind of comment that we're looking for. Another one here we want to highlight. Does anyone comment in the chat? Anyone know this hideous, ugly, disgusting graph? What does this mean to you if you've seen this before? Different businesses or organizations, you will reach this at different points. Plateau. Yep, this is plateau. Another word is a growth ceiling, where what got you where you are is not going to get you where you need to be. And it could be revenue. It could also be the number of people. Maybe it's clients. You max out at a certain number of clients. Or maybe if you're in a nonprofit sector or for churches, there are growth ceilings where you can't get any more people. As many people are coming as are leaving, and you're at a growth ceiling. We need to address these issues. And when we tie it back to culture, we need to ask the question, are you building culture on purpose? Or are you letting it form by accident? If we're stepping up as leaders, we need to understand that it's not just our responsibility anymore to do the thing. We need to build the world that our team lives in. It's always being built. Culture is always shaping, and for some of us, it's a little bit more chaotic and all over the place, especially when we're in early growth or rapid growth stages. On the other hand, what we're looking for is focus and clarity and alignment. We want to build those types of environments. Last piece here of what we're trying to go after, we want to build something that we're proud of. For many of you, you've got amazing businesses that are incredible. I'm thinking of Bryce with CloseBot. This is an incredible business, and in its lane, it is a industry-defining product. But it's also about the people's lives that we touch. I hope that you guys can share this same heartbeat, that we want people to walk away from their time with us, however long it is. I hope it's a long time that you get to work with your teams, but when they leave us, the kind of things that we want to hear are, that was the best job I ever had. Man, you were the best leader. The best boss I ever had. You made a difference. My life is on a new trajectory because of my time with you. So we want to impact all these things by creating a type of environment or world where people can get skills and thrive. It's going to be good for the business, but also it's going to touch lives in a way that really, that's what we can walk away with and say, I did good. A little bit about Will Winter as we dive in here. Who is Will Winter? For those who do not know me, first thing you should know is I have the most beautiful son in the whole wide world. There is Samuel. He is 15 months, and he is my chief fun officer. I hope some of you have chief fun officers in your world. I've also got a beautiful wife there. There's Jessica Jean. We've been married about 6 years now, and we've got baby number 2 on the way in August. If you guys are building a great business and it's at the expense of your family, I've read a few biographies lately. We have the Shoe Dog story. That's a great one. Phil Knight, Nike. There's the Apple biography, Steve Jobs. I'm reading Elon Musk's right now. And a lot of these people built something cool, but they had a lot of pain in their families. And that's a standard I don't want to break. Family is the most important area that you have leadership and influence. There's my little rant there. My background, when I was a young warthog, when I was a younger man, I had these visions of something big with my life. There's something in me as a young 20-year-old, the whole life ahead of me. I was going to change the world. But I felt frustrated because I was in work environments. I was in places where the supervisors, the bosses, the mentors, they didn't know how to handle me. I was a little rebellious. I was a little untamable. I don't know how many would have dealt with me, but eventually I did come across a few good leaders. Not too many, but a few. Think of the good leaders in your lives or teachers, people that made a difference. And I think of people like David Smith here and Steve Backlund. David Smith believed in me, and he also gave me actual tools that I could do something with. Same with Steve. He had this system, this process where he believed if you spend 1 year of your life with me, you're going to be transformed. That was his belief, and it happened. Throughout my 20s, I was really invested in growth and leadership. Even if opportunities didn't align, I was going after it. And at the end of that season of my life, we're always learning, but at the end of my 20s, I had this path to choose. And I actually wanted to be a pastor. For some of you here, you're in ministry, you're missionaries or doing nonprofits. I wanted to be a pastor. But it felt like the only doors that were opening up to me were in business, the corporate world. And so for the next several years, I ended up taking this opportunity with a man named Alex Branning. We did software for insurance agents, and I'm going to share some examples and stories later on. We built an amazing thing together. The tech was incredible. I really believe, for those who know the go high level world, high level, I believe we built one of the best iterations of some of the tools that they have. We hacked them. We did some cool stuff. But at the end of that time, I ended up resigning because I knew I had more inside of me to let loose in this world. And on our final team meeting, I hope you guys can have moments like this in your lives. On the final team meeting, people shared these stories. They shared the impact. And many of us were in tears, myself included. And that was a moment where I felt like we did something right. We created something so beautiful that people still will reach out and say, Will, I'm cheering you on. Will, you were one of the biggest impacts in my life. And that's what I want for each of you, where you can step into that level of influence for those you lead. You're going to drive more performance. You're going to get more results. But this is what I talk about, something we can be proud of, the lives that we touched in a positive way. At the end of this time, I realized this is something that we need to embed in other businesses. And what you're experiencing today is what I call the greatness incubator. The vision and the goal is not just that you in this room would be incubated into greatness, but also that you would look at your workplaces, that everywhere you go that you have influence, it would become a place where people are catalyzed into their potential. They learn the skill sets that are helpful to succeed in their role, and they're elevated to a new standard that will help them to soar in life. Some of the ways that I'm helping businesses now is improving team performance. There's the direct ROI that we do need to address. It's not just about having a great, fun time. We also want to figure out how we can attract and retain great people, how to strengthen ownership and accountability. That's other work that I do. Developing future leaders on your team so that you're no longer being the bottleneck. And touching on that as well is scaling beyond founder dependency. If you're growing your organization and all of a sudden you feel like, again, back to that bottleneck, we need to solve that by raising the bar for our businesses. Here's the questions as we get back into culture itself. What is culture? How does it impact our initiatives? How does it impact our people? And then how can we intentionally craft it? That's what we're getting into now. Let's start with a question here. What is culture? Type that in the chat below. What is culture? A word or a phrase? I've gotten some great ones from the past few. I'll share what others said. What is culture? Give me a word or a description. Here's one that someone said. I'm going to keep using this. What people do when no one is watching. What people do when no one is watching. The way we experience a particular environment, that's from Jason. Team moving as a force with the same vision. As a force, I like that word. An atmosphere that affects people. Think of it like momentum. You've got an energy or inertia in a certain direction. Great comments here. Here's a word or a phrase that we're going to use as we dive in. Bryce is stealing all of those for his own. Culture is a way of life that a group experiences together. And it's a combination of a few things. It's habits, it's beliefs, it's expectations, behaviors, and values. And they all come together and they create this way of life that we're experiencing. We need to look back at the big picture. Sometimes we're so in the weeds that we miss. How do we craft the environment? How do we craft the culture? Something to consider, maybe some of you want to screenshot this or write it down for reflection later. What is your culture? And getting an honest look, a positive and a negative, or a few. You might list that down as an action step. What is your culture? Is there an area you're proud of? Let's start there. And then are there areas where, there's a little bit of competition that's unhealthy? People are dragging their feet. Excellence is not. What are the things that you want to reflect on? That's a question that I believe some of you are going to get a lot of insight out of. Culture is telling people what matters. You may be saying one thing, but the culture itself is telling people based on what gets rewarded, what gets tolerated, what gets ignored or repeated. And they're paying attention to these things. You don't realize they're taking notes. And sometimes what happens is that culture is teaching people what's normal, and you think you're saying, why can't they just follow what I'm saying? Because culture is their greatest teacher. If you've seen this before, I'd love comment yes if you've seen this quote. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. That means the experiences that you have. Are people dragging their feet? Are people not bought in? Are people getting certain results or lack of? We have designed the system, the mechanisms, the world that they live in. And we have to take ownership as we dive into this conversation of the tools that we have. We need to recognize we, as the founder, as the manager, the supervisor, maybe even a parent, we've created this world and we are responsible for the results that we're getting. Some of you have businesses or organizations or communities where you're like, I don't like my job. I don't like showing up. I don't like my team. And you were the one that put this all together. So today we're gonna take a turn. We're gonna create an inner vow to take responsibility and design a world that we want to live in. Maybe you've experienced this as well. You've got a great strategy, and I do want to affirm some of you where you're feeling frustrated, you actually have a great strategy. But at times it can feel like an uphill battle, and that's because the gravitational force of the culture, the norms, the habits, and unspoken standards are pushing against your plan. You might have a great plan, and that's not why it failed. It might not be the plan. It might be the environment working against it. And that's what we're going to craft with these tools. We don't want to ask, why didn't they succeed or who's to blame? We want to ask the bigger question, did this plan even stand a chance inside of the culture that we've built by intention or by accident? Healthy culture is not built by force, manipulation, panic, whip cracking, demanding people to get on board. Why don't they just do it? They're getting paid. Just do their job. The first slide I had when I did this, it said culture is not built by. But how many of you know there is a type of culture that's built by these things? It's not the culture that gets long-term results. So we want to design a culture that's sustainable and set people up. We're shaping the environment. That's what you guys are doing as leaders, is you're not just shaping people. You're shaping the environment that shapes people so that the right behaviors become normal. The new standard becomes the new normal that you're trying to set. And again, legacy is super important to me. People are super important. It's not just about squeezing out performance of people. It's not just how can I get a little more work out of them in their day. If you build the people will build the business. And so we need to consider, what is the investment in people? Do we believe in them? Do we care about them enough to say, you know what? I love getting in the weeds and I love just shutting everyone out, but I actually need to invest and develop people. I need to grow my leadership influence, because if I build them, if I invest in them, that's going to have an impact on their lives, and then a secondary impact, of course, on the business. It's about building people. So here's the toolkit as we get in today. I'll start with an overview, and I am going to use some examples just to make this practical. We need to see what this looks like in action. Here's the 7 tools. Some of you might want to screenshot this. Celebration and discouragement. That's the first tool in our belt. Values. Some of you have values or you're working on them. Language. What kind of words or phrases do we use in our world? Modeling. What do we demonstrate? Team. Who's on the team? And how do they impact our world? Stories and time commitments. First tool here, celebration and discouragement. What you celebrate gets repeated. What you tolerate becomes normal. And what you confront loses permission. What we're doing here is we're putting a seal of approval on certain things. And as we celebrate and encourage, we're actually saying more of this. At times we need to discourage and step in too. I'll share an example. But if we don't step in, things continue to go on. And some of you are having an aha moment. I need to address that. Yeah, it's time. It's time to nip that in the bud. Here's an example from what we did with Agent CRM. Celebration. Meeting shoutouts. Some of you have weekly meetings, maybe you have daily stand-ups or monthly meetings. Whatever your frequency looks like, what we would do is this. We'd get our team together on our huddle, and we might say to them, hey everyone, great to see you all today. We say, hey, let's start with some shout-outs. Who are you grateful for and why? And what we'd do is we'd type in the chat, let's put that there. Here are our values. Look in the Zoom chat below. There's our 6 values. I want you to pick a person on the team. Who are you proud of? Who are you thankful for? Why and what value? And we get this energy going. Whether it's an all-team meeting or a manager meeting, we start with celebration. And the people who get spotlighted, the first thing is they perk up. Oh, you noticed? And it reinforces that behavior. For others, they're not getting spotlighted and they turn and say, is that what it takes to get attention? Okay, maybe I'll start doing that. It feels good to get celebrated and it can reinforce what we're looking for. Here's another example. Shout outs in your team chat. I'm a Slack person. If you guys are Slack nerds, I'd love to hear my fellow Slack people. I absolutely love this as a town hall or a team communication channel. Wherever it looks like for your team, what we would do is we'd find behaviors or examples in the wild and we'd screenshot them. Shaw did great formatting. And in a information heavy world that we were in with tech, we needed things to be organized. And so what we would do is we'd screenshot and we'd say, this, yes, seal of approval. We do a little teaching, a little, few lines. What does this mean? And I create these graphics. This is what excellence looks like. You're an excellence person when you do things like this. What I'd do is I'd just have a recording and I'd do some poses. I'd swap them onto Canva and I'd create these different graphics. I'll show you two more here. Wakas left some of the best detailed notes, and he did it really well after every appointment. And so I used AI, I generated a superhero image of him. I took a screenshot, put that photo back, and we're saying, this guy here, he is amazing. And every week we'd have a new shout out. I'd create these graphics, took maybe 10 minutes to do. There's one more here. Sherry left some of the best notes. Notes were super important, so we shouted that out a lot. But there were other things we did as well, and we take these types of examples to put our seal of approval on certain things. We saw people feel celebrated. It's like injecting fuel into their tank. They feel recognized. How many of you've been in situations where you really gave it your all, but after a while you felt like no one was noticing, and you started dragging your feet? One more example of discouragement here. Confrontation. Easy, hard. Type in the chat, what is your experience of confrontation? Because we need to talk about discouragement as well. Fill in the blank. Discouragement or confrontation is ... Crystal's a pro. Maybe we can hire Crystal to come and do all our confrontation for us. Confrontation is challenging to be gentle in it, definitely. Some of us didn't learn this well, and so as leaders, we need to actually develop a skill, a framework at times. What are the ways I can do this effectively? I had a teammate every Friday. He would put these posts on Slack, and it was kind of humorous in a sense. It was like looking forward to the weekend, those types of posts. But it carried with it this sense like, work sucks, I can't wait to get out of here. It wasn't that overt, but it had that kind of energy to it. And to be honest, I never confronted it. It felt like awkward or too big a deal to step in. Eventually we let go of this person. But next time around, I thought, you know what? I need to jump in. These things actually send a message to the other employees. And if we let these things continue, it's seeping into the environment. And so if we confront them, they lose permission. It might just look like, hey, hey man, I appreciate your engagement. I know you're trying to be funny with this post, but I think it's sending a message you might not intend. And I'd appreciate it if you could find other ways to engage or encourage the team. And I know you're just looking forward to the weekend, but here's what you're sending as a message. I'd appreciate if you stopped doing it. Could be gentle like that. Confrontation, this is from James and Don. If done well or received well, it creates growth opportunities and maturity. Definitely. Confrontation is too easy to put off until it's too late. That was my story. Are you intentionally reinforcing the behaviors you want, or accidentally rewarding the ones you complain about? We do have the continued program, so this is what we'll talk about if you continue on with me. We've got frameworks for encouragement. There's actually a 3-level of encouragement framework that will really impact people. Celebration rhythm, where does celebration fit into your world? What does a correction framework or confrontation framework look like? And then what are the meeting structures that will reinforce? We're going to build that in the intensive for those who join. Second is values. Do you have values yet? Yes, no, I'm in the middle of it. You can type that in the chat. Values clarify what guides decisions, behaviors, priorities, standards. Without clear values, people guess. I'd love to hear who has values yet in your business. For the first few years of managing, I was the COO of Agent CRM, and we hired a lot of misfits. And I don't mean like they're quirky and it's fun. I mean, they did not belong in our world. And the problem was that we didn't know what we needed. Here's a way to look at values. If you guys are in the middle of discussing or exploring your values, we need to first understand, who are we? There's things that we need to make sure we're building a world that we enjoy being in. And for example, myself, excellence. You might get a sense of that as you see, the slide transitions and this kind of fun lighting behind me here and the way everything's happening. Excellence. If excellence wasn't in my business, I would hate it. And so excellence is my personal value, but also, what does the business actually need? And where they overlap, we can create our business values. What does that look like? Well, with Agent CRM, here's the story. We hired these team members to help onboard clients, and we would get sometimes 20 new users a day for our software. If you get 20 users a day, you are needing to develop systems and processes. And how many of you know there's a type of person that likes to color outside of the lines? There is no box. They're just out there. And some of us, that's me. That's okay if you're that type of person, but you would not be a good fit because we need systems people. And so we finally came up with these values, and we started finding that we were hiring the right people. Systems driven. Maybe you have phrases, maybe you have a single word, but for us, we said, this is what it is, this is what it looks like. And we even had drop downs with extra, whether people read it or not, but if in your personal life you're a systems driven person. And we use these values to start making better decisions. There's excellence. I just had to vote for that one in the business. Growth mindset, initiative. It's a tech industry. If you're in tech, like Bryce or some others, you could just feel this like whiplash of how fast things are moving. And we knew we needed people who could keep up. So if you're not a growth person, if you don't love to grow, that's fine, but you won't be a good fit here. We use these to make better decisions. There's a hiring funnel for those who are curious. Apply.agent-crm.com. I'm not asking you to apply for a job, but if you want an example of how we filtered people out in the hiring process, how do we say front and center? This is who we're looking for. That's a great example for you guys to steal. It's not just business. Some of you in family, it might be worth considering. My wife and I, Jessica Jean, we got married during COVID. We had to have a little fun there with our photos. We sat down on our honeymoon and we decided we want to be at a certain place in life. We have some dreams. But how do we make sure that, for as different as the two of us are, we have guiding North Star values that help us to make better decisions in life? And this is how it works for your business too. When you know your values, when you come across hard decisions, you, and especially your team, this is how we build culture, your team starts to ask, well, what does excellence look like? Okay, I'm going to make this decision. What is systems driven? Okay, I need to create the documentation. And they start to self-monitor and self-guide. Even this business, what you're experiencing right now, when I left Agent CRM, I had options. But one of our values is we boldly pursue our dreams and we encourage others to pursue theirs. And when we wrestled with what do we do next in this season of life, I knew I would not be living up to my values if I didn't take this leap of faith. Are our values actually shaping culture if we have them? Or are they just cute words on a wall somewhere? Do your team even know your values? How do our values fit into our decision-making process? That's something that we want to consider. What we're looking to do is create usable core values, not just cute things that don't really mean anything. Usable. core values. And then decision filters, we're going to build that in the intensive. We also want to make sure in the hiring process, some of you, it's hiring your team, but also maybe you work with others like a VA or outsourced. They're representing your business still. And they might not be fully in-house employees, but are they representing your values on the front lines? We also want to weave these into meetings. I gave you an example where I dumped that into the chat. I said, hey, check it out, guys. We want to keep these front and center, so we'll build that rhythm together. Language is the third tool. Language creates shared meaning. When leaders repeat words, it becomes the lens that people think with. And culture strengthens when people can repeat it. Some of you, you have the grandma sayings that are a part of your family culture. There's a mom, I'm going to steal this from her. When she raised her kids, they would come across challenges like we all do. And there was a phrase that she spoke. Every time they had a challenge, she'd say, there's always a solution. And it got to the point where she would have her child come to her and the child would be frustrated and it's, what do we say, honey? There's always a solution. And they knew that phrase and it became a lens. It's like a seed of a belief. And we keep planting these seeds in our world and we get our leaders to align. What are the phrases that we use? And all of a sudden, when we come across challenges, I know there's always a solution. If you have any family or grandma sayings, I'd love to hear those. But a question here is, what phrases, beliefs, and assumptions are currently shaping how your team responds to pressure? Or how your team talks about clients behind their back? That's another important question, is what are the phrases or words that become normal in our world? We actually want to create or design those statements. What we want to build in the intensive is your language bank. What are the things that you're going to start sowing into your world? What ideas or beliefs or perspectives need to become normal? Phrases that also reinforce ownership or excellence. And then how do we correct language? Again, confrontation, get used to it. How can we confront things without drama? And then what are the repeated statements that you can use? I hope you use this in your family as well. I gave you a family example for this one, but I hope you get the idea of owning words or statements that you can continue to sow. If language is expressing our values, modeling is about demonstrating them. Modeling is the fourth tool, and culture is often caught before it's taught. People follow what leaders embody. It's preparation, encouragement, humility, excellence, and follow through. They're watching. How many of you've heard this statement? Do as I say, not as I do. I'm not going to tell you who said that in my life. Some of you have heard that. The heart of it is there's a standard that I hope for your life, or there's a standard we need to meet. And I'm not there, but I want you to do better. But that's not good leadership, because people are watching and they need to understand, what do these ideas actually look like with legs on? And I think back to my mentor, Steve Backlund. We would be walking down the hallway and we'd be going to a meeting and he'd stop someone, a random person, and he'd stop and give them encouragement. He might just speak some life or some hope. He might share a verse or a scripture with them from the Bible, and it would cause them to light up and look at their day. They'd say, Steve, that made my day. Thank you so much. On the back of his book, his biography, or not his biography, any of his books, they always say, Steve Backlund is an encourager. And he gave examples of what that looked like, so I could say, oh, so that's what it looks like to do the thing. Or here's an expression of that. We need to actually demonstrate what we're trying to incorporate. So are your leaders embodying the standards or contradicting it? Especially for those with larger teams, we need to understand, what behaviors do people need to buy into to see results? And actually crafting, what are the things that we own that we always do so we can replicate in our world. We want to have an audit of our modeling. There are things that we need to have a hard look and say, oh, actually, that needs to change in how I show up. But a second step that we want to cover here on the intensive is vital behaviors. What are the things that you do all the time that will need to be reproduced? For example, when I go to church on Sundays, my vital behavior is I am always looking for one meaningful conversation. And so I go, and that's the action is going to dive into one conversation. And that creates connection, and that creates impact and community. What are the vital behaviors that your world needs? You always do X. Personal leadership alignment check. We want to make sure that we are following our own standards and we understand that there's not a disconnect between our values and how we show up. That's what we're going to cover with the fourth tool, modeling. Team is the fifth one. This is about who is in your world, who is shaping the environment. And when you're a business, you start with you and then you bring more people on, and all of a sudden you're further removed from some of the other team members. You've got a chain of command, and all of a sudden these other people, or even frontline workers, entry-level workers, who you hire, promote, platform, tolerate, and remove, it affects the culture. Influence, it must be protected. And if we're bringing in the right or the wrong people, that can have a huge impact. Culture fit, here's an encouragement. Culture fit is always better than talent. Some of you have trauma responses or triggers in this moment because you can think of those employees, you put up with them for way too long because they were getting results. Maybe they were making sales, or maybe they were just a hustler, but they had maybe a bad attitude and it was never corrected. Or maybe they brought something toxic and it was causing, this was a challenge we faced. We almost lost one of our best employees because we gave them someone else to lead. We said, hey, catch, this person's yours. And this person was a bit of a bulldog, a bull in a china shop. And it was causing tension and frustration with this supervisor. The wrong fit can be disastrous. If we talk about ROI or return on investment from actions, this could be one of the biggest ones for some of you. Depending on where you hire, the cost of the right or the wrong fit could be a significant expense. And so we want to make sure we understand who is shaping the right culture and who needs to be promoted or fired, let go. Is this the right time to make that hard decision? Do we have the right people in the right roles? These are questions that we want to ask as well. They are shaping our culture. You want to have a culture fit criteria. How do we know what it looks like? Like, how do we get that right the first time? How do we spot? Hiring itself is a learned skill. So what's your culture fit criteria? What are the standards or filters for when people get platformed or promoted? How do we know if they're misaligned? We have to have diagnostic tools available. And then role fit, influence. Are we promoting people with the wrong criteria? They were a great doer, but they're not a leader. And sometimes we promote doers and we don't promote people. We need people to lead, not just people who are executors. Interview questions, that's what we'll cover as well in the intensive. 6, stories. This is one of my personal favorites. Stories and encouragement are my favorite of the 7. Stories preserve culture. We are story people. And part of it is about the transmission of values and courage and identity. That through these stories, they make an impact because they're personal, but they also are memorable. And so a question here is, what stories in your world need to be told more often? Here's what we did at Agent CRM. We had team members come to us and they said, Will, why are we doing insurance as a product? High level, the tool that was built on, you could use that for any business. Why insurance? And they asked these questions. And so I said to Alex, can I get you on a team meeting? Can I get you to share your story? And for about 15 minutes on Zoom, he shared his story and we clipped it up and we threw it into the onboarding. So now every single new employee within the first 3 videos of their onboarding, they're going to hear this story of Agent CRM. Now, it's not just about how awesome is Alex, how awesome is Jason or James. It's not just about saying, ooh, look at this person. It's about saying, what was the journey? What was the mission that you undertook? What are the obstacles that you overcame that we can be inspired by? Do people know the story of what you're trying to do? Another one is about the team story. And so what we did, we were trying to hire better. If you've clicked on that funnel link, someone posted that into the chat. What we did was we asked our team members, what's it like to work here? How have you grown? We had 3 questions. We sent them a link and they captured these videos. We had about 30 videos in total, and I got my executive assistant to rank them. Watch all these videos and give them 1 to 5. 1, it's great. 4, that's pretty good. That's inspiring. And then 5, oh, I'm jazzed up by this story. So we ranked them, and then we took anything that was a 4 or 5, and we put them, first of all, on the hiring funnel. We came up with these statements based on what they shared. Develop your leadership. This is a place to build a career. This is a supportive team culture. And these were the stories that they shared, maybe 2-3 minutes per video. And even if the people who were applying didn't watch them, they'd see these headlines. A place to learn. You get constant encouragement here. You're going to grow in confidence. And they became ways that we could attract better talent. But even in the onboardings, we would weave these videos in. Just 2-3 minute videos, every chapter or 2. If it made sense, we'd fit that aligning video, that story, with that chapter. So you get these little injections. And maybe you share them in your Slack channel, or if you have a Facebook group, you share these regularly. So here's the 3 stories. I covered the first 2. What is the origin story of your organization? What mission or quest, and also the values that were demonstrated? What are the employee stories? What are they being invited into? Are they able to grow, and what transformation will take place? Or what opportunities exist for them? Finally, client impact. Now, some of you are really good at this for your leads or your audience. You share the testimonials, but what about your team? And I added this one because sometimes we have our teams who are head in the weeds. They are just nose to the grind, and they get disconnected from the impact that they're having. Does your team know the difference that they're making when they're going day to day and they're making these fine-tuned things and they don't remember lives are being changed? People can afford to go on vacations with their kids because your business helped them to thrive. Whatever transformation took place, get these stories and share them regularly with your team members. This is going to keep the mission and the impact front and center so that as days turn into weeks, into months, that we can maintain and inject fresh fuel into our team and keep that energy going. What stories are your team telling about the business, about the mission, the leader, and themselves? Some of us need to evaluate and to consider. There may be stories that, based on your leadership, oh, it's another one of Will's crazy ideas again. And there's a story about how I just, keep going all over the place and new initiatives all the time. There's stories that are being told, and we need to use stories with intention in our world. In the intensive, we want to design the origin story. I'm going to do training on how to better tell your story so that when you tell it, you get a 5 out of 5 for inspiration and not a 1 out of 5. We want to tell our stories well. We want to gather team stories that reinforce identity and gather client impact stories. We want to make sure we're doing that as well. Stories for onboarding, hiring, we're going to plan and place these into your business and then figure out how can we capture a story system well. Time commitments is the 7th culture building tool. And it's similar to the idea of what you spend money on reveals your priorities. If I looked at your credit card statement, I would know what's important to you. If I look at your calendar reveals your culture. And these values that we talked about, they become more real when they actually impact or touch the schedule. Time shows what actually matters. Some of you have things where you're like, I know I need to get that done, but stuff just keeps coming up. We need to put it into the calendar. Here's an example. This doesn't need to be what your life looks like, but maybe it moves closer in this direction, where you start to put things in the calendar that you know are important. So for me, I don't want you to look at this and say, Will is super altogether. I'm one of those butterflies or shiny object. Oh. And if I didn't do this with my life, I wouldn't get where I wanted to be. The things that I know are important, I need to find a place for in my week. With my previous job, I was looking to launch this business, and I knew if I didn't wake up early and plug that in, I wouldn't launch my own endeavor. So I added empire building time into my early mornings. For a while, talking about encouragement, what I would do is I'd plug in on Tuesdays, a 15-minute block, maybe a half-hour block for encouragement. And I would just spend time shooting voice memos to as many people on my team as I could think of. I scheduled encouragement because it was important. Maybe learning time. Some of you guys, growth-minded, that was a value of ours. But if we didn't give our team set aside time to learn, they wouldn't develop the ongoing skills. So where in your week are things needed to be added for your team's sake or even for your own sake so that you can make sure that we do the things in our week that are important, that build our world, build our culture, and get stuff done. So where does our calendar contradict our values? That's an important question to ask. Where are we contradicting what we say is important to us? How does my week or meeting structure need to be adjusted? It's not just the big picture, even in those blocks of time. Let's say in the manager sync, do we believe that encouragement is important? I keep using that example, but maybe even growth-minded at the end of every meeting, 5 minutes, maybe 3. We always asked, how would you rate this meeting and why? Because we wanted to grow, and so we put it into that time block. Rate this meeting and why. And so we'd grow, but we'd have that in our actual calendar, in our actual meeting rhythm itself. There's the questions for you to reflect on. We want to audit our calendars. We're going to go through a process of reviewing the calendars itself, make sure that we're aligning. We also want to have a redesign of our meeting rhythm if necessary. Some of you need to meet with your teams more often, or you need to change what that looks like. How can we have a weekly reinforcement of habits? There could be something that you add to make sure things get done. Time blocks for development, celebration, and accountability. Where is that going to go into your week? We cover that in the intensive. Final thoughts here as we wrap up and go into the invitation. This is about taking ownership of the world that we create for our team. And part of this is using the tools, but part of this is also accepting or receiving an invitation to grow as a leader. And we may not at first think of ourselves as leaders, but we are making an impact. We are leading by intention or by inaction. We're sending a message or a signal, and there's things that we need to adjust within ourselves as well. It's not just about fixing them. They're the problem. If I only had the right people. We need to become the right kind of person to attract and grow amazing teams. That's what I hope for you guys here. And again, you guys are creating greatness incubators, places where people are soaring and elevated. People are thriving while you accomplish the mission that you're after. All right, I said I was going to ask this question. I'd love to hear in the chat. Maybe you've circled something on your notepad. Maybe something is coming to mind. What is your one takeaway or insight from this session today? What's the biggest awareness, takeaway, insight? I'd love to hear that in the chat. Maybe it's a phrase that stuck out. Maybe it's something you know. Telling employees stories to the rest of the team to inform culture. Something I never thought of. Impacting lives. Yes. If you build the people build the organization. Some of us are too busy trying to build the business, and we have a team who, they're the ones that we want to equip. We need to step out of the weeds sometimes. I'll give you guys a few more moments here. Someone's typing here. I've got 2. One sec. Doing all the shout outs in every meeting and aligning those shout outs to our values. Yes. Showing people what gets rewarded. Takeaway is how joyful leadership development can be. Yeah. It's super meaningful. Glad you share that heart. Checking the calendar for value alignment. Why can't they just do what I say them to do? It's because of the culture. Yeah. Operate in the spirit of excellence, and it's contagious. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. Adjusting within myself. Yeah. Great feedback. Thank you guys so much for the engagement. And I do want to make this comment here. I do want to invite you guys. I've talked about through all this conversation, the continued opportunities. It's not just about a good idea you heard once. Some of us, we have this sense that if I show up to a bunch of webinars, I'm moving my business forward. Or if you're like me, I've read all these books, so therefore I've grown. It's when you put it to use. And so what I want to invite you guys to is solving these problems together. The problems we talked about at the beginning of this call is about making sure standards don't just rely on you. We don't want you to be the bottleneck. We want to make sure that your plans don't lose momentum. We don't want your best people to get frustrated and leave. These are the issues that we're going after in the intensive. So here's the invitation that I'm bringing to you guys today. I'm calling it the Cultural Architect Intensive. Something cool. 8-week implementation cohort. What we're going to do is take each of these tools in depth, and we're going to install a cultural system in your world. We're going to update your OS, your software of your business, so to speak. Think of PC or Mac, the operating system. How do things function? We're going to turn all these tools into assets, talking about the videos, talking about the values, all these things, and resources so that your team can actually plug these into what you're doing. So again, here's the 7 tools. If you want to screenshot this or you have the notes from earlier, you guys will get some follow-up resources as well. But there's going to be 7 tools that we go after, 1 week per tool. And there will be a bonus session. But also, I know some of you, it's not just about sitting and listening. There is going to be training, but I want to workshop with you. And I also want to have you guys learn from each other. So we're going to have an extra session each week where whoever wants to come, it will be a drop-in session. And we're going to workshop, we're going to get ideas and share and give feedback based on how you guys are using the tools. So it's going to be 2 sessions each week. Again, training sessions with the tools, the skills, and then implementation sessions. We will have resources and downloadable assets as well. It is starting soon, so there is a little bit of urgency. I'm not coming up with false urgency for the sake of a webinar here. There is going to be a start date within the next 2 weeks. And some of you who are watching for a replay, there will be a next step that's still practical for you as well, even if it's after the cohort has started. But for those who are interested in diving in, there's 2 options available. If it's just you and you're coming through this program, the 8-week program, again, there's an extra session in there as well. We're going to dive deep into this together. And for the first cohort that we're starting, it will be at $2,000 US for that enrollment. If that's you, I would love to chat. I'll give you guys the calendar link in a second. Secondly, if you are an organization, maybe you've got a bigger team and you know, this is really great and I will show up, but I'm not the only one implementing this. I would love to train your team. And so we're including up to 5 seats. You've got a COO, you've got a manager, several supervisors. We want to bring them into this whole experience together. And that will be 4,000 US for a team or organizational enrollment. Extra bonus here, because I do want to reward those who are like, yes, well, I'm interested. I need to know who's actually game. If you guys take action, I'm going to give you the calendar link here. I do want to throw in a one-on-one session for you, and if your organization, your team that you bring. Some of you have done this before, or you've done other strengths tests. There's DISC, there's Myers-Briggs, but this one was one of the best I ever found. My wife and I did it, and it helped us understand who are we. What strengths should we be playing to rather than trying to be someone that we're not? I don't want anyone for you who are here to think I need to be more like Will to be a great leader. There are things you can take, but we want to discuss what are you actually bringing as your own strengths. So if you book, it could be any time in the next week, whatever's on my calendar, but if you just lock in a calendar appointment, I'm going to make sure you get that extra resource. Let's throw in the chat. There is the link. You might have had it earlier, but I'd love for some of you to book a call if you feel like I'd like to talk a little bit more. I think this is what I need, and I need these problems solved. I need these problems solved. Let's have a conversation. Again, we're starting a cohort soon, but if you jump on a call, I'll help to just talk through your culture. What are you trying to solve? I'll leave you some encouragement tips, and maybe you might join us in this program. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'll leave that link up actually one more second there. thegreatnessincubator.com/connect. Thank you guys for joining, for your engagement, for those who could join live or replay. I love the engagement too in the chat. Super helpful to see. We're all on a journey together. We're trying to increase our impact, our influence, and crafting the world that we live in so that those who are with us can thrive. That is a beautiful mission to be after. Appreciate you guys a ton. Go and change your world. Go and take your leadership to the next level. I'm looking forward to meeting some of you on those calls. Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate your engagement there. Miriam, thank you. James, Jason, Joel, great to see you. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you on those one-on-one calls.